The boy helped Ronaldo with a punctured tire, and their family received a surprise visit the next day. Subscribe, share the video, and write in the comments where you're watching us from. The sun climbed steadily over the horizon, its fiery orange glow staining the endless desert in shades of gold and crimson. The highway stretched like a dark ribbon cutting through the barren landscape, flanked on either side by low, jagged hills. Heat waves shimmered in the distance, creating illusions of water that would never come. The wind, hot and dry, carried fine grains of sand that scraped against the sleek surface of the car parked on the side of the road. Inside the car sat Cristiano Ronaldo, his hands gripping the steering wheel loosely, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The air conditioning hummed quietly, doing its best to combat the desert heat, but the tension in the car was palpable. The soft leather seat under him, the polished dashboard, and the precision-engineered luxury of his Bugatti offered no comfort. It was a car that screamed of success and power, yet here it stood, a silent observer of its owner's fatigue. Cristiano's thoughts were a torrent of unresolved emotions. The past week had been grueling, a string of matches, public appearances, and endless scrutiny from the media. On the field, he was a hero, a legend etched into the annals of football history. Off the field, he felt more like a ghost, haunted by the weight of his fame. He thought about his family, his team, the fans who adored him. But he also thought about the isolation that success had brought. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a quiet moment without cameras or expectations lurking in the shadows. The Bugatti was both a trophy and a prison. Its flawless design reflected his image in the world's eyes, sleek, invincible, untouchable. Yet, as Cristiano stared out at the empty road ahead, he realized how deeply alone he felt. The world he had conquered seemed insignificant against the vastness of the desert. The thought was interrupted by a sudden, jarring sound. A loud pop echoed in the stillness, followed by the unmistakable thrum of a flat tire. Instinctively, Cristiano tightened his grip on the wheel, his body tensing as the car wobbled slightly to one side. He brought it to a stop on the shoulder of the highway, the fine sand crunching beneath the tires. Stepping out of the car, Cristiano was hit by a wave of scorching heat. He shielded his eyes with one hand, surveying the damage. The rear tire on the passenger's side was completely deflated, the rubber torn. He let out a string of curses under his breath. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on him. A global icon stranded in the middle of nowhere with a flat tire and no cell service. His phone, a symbol of his constant connection to the world, had died hours ago, leaving him completely cut off. Cristiano glanced up and down the highway. Nothing but empty road as far as the eye could see. No cars, no people, just the relentless sun beating down on the desolate landscape. He leaned against the car, running a hand through his hair. Minutes turned to an hour as he tried to come up with a solution. He had no spare tire, an oversight he now regretted deeply. The helplessness gnawed at him. Then, in the distance, something moved. A small figure appeared on the horizon, slowly growing larger as it approached. Cristiano squinted against the glare of the sun, unsure if it was a mirage or reality. As the figure drew closer, he could make out the outline of a boy, barefoot, his clothes tattered and dusty. He carried a small bag slung over one shoulder and walked with a calm determination that seemed out of place in the desolation. Cristiano straightened, his curiosity piqued. The boy couldn't have been more than 10 or 11 years old. His dark hair was messy, his skin sun-kissed and weathered beyond his years. There was a confidence in his stride that belied his size. "Need help?" the boy called out as he drew closer. His voice was steady, almost casual, as though coming across a stranded luxury car, and its world-famous driver was an everyday occurrence. Cristiano hesitated for a moment before responding. "Do you live around here?" The boy stopped a few feet away, looking up at him with curious eyes. "Not far, just over the hill." He gestured vaguely to the east. "What happened?" "Flat tire," Cristiano said, pointing to the rear wheel. He tried to keep his tone neutral, but the frustration seeped through. "No spare, no phone, no one around." The boy nodded, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he set his bag down and walked over to the damaged tire. Cristiano watched, unsure of what to make of this strange encounter. The boy knelt by the wheel, inspecting it with an air of quiet competence. "You're lucky it's just one," the boy said after a moment, standing and dusting off his hands. "I can help you, but you'll owe me a story." Cristiano raised an eyebrow. "A story?" "Yeah," the boy said with a grin. "You look like someone who has good stories. You tell me one while I fix this." It was such an odd request that Cristiano almost laughed. He studied the boy for a moment, then nodded. "All right, you help me, and I'll tell you a story." The boy's grin widened. He opened his bag, pulling out a handful of tools that looked as though they'd been scavenged from a junkyard. Cristiano couldn't help but feel a twinge of skepticism, but there was something about the boy's confidence that reassured him. As the boy began working on the tire, Cristiano leaned against the car, watching. The boy moved with a surprising efficiency, using rocks to stabilize the car and his makeshift tools to pry the damaged tire loose. Cristiano couldn't help but be impressed. "Where'd you learn to do this?" he asked. The boy shrugged. "I help my family. We don't have much, so we make do. If something breaks, we fix it. Can't afford not to." Cristiano nodded, his respect for the boy growing. They fell into a comfortable silence, the rhythmic clinking of tools filling the air. For the first time in a long while, Cristiano felt a sense of connection to the boy, to the simplicity of the moment, to the quiet determination that mirrored his own struggles in life. As the boy worked, Cristiano began to tell his story, just as promised. He spoke of his childhood, of the sacrifices his family had made, of the unrelenting drive that had propelled him to greatness. The boy listened intently, his hands never stopping as he worked. By the time the spare tire was secured, the sun was high in the sky, and Cristiano felt a strange sense of gratitude. The boy had fixed more than just his car. He had reminded him of something he had lost, a connection to the real, unfiltered world. "Thank you," Cristiano said sincerely, extending his hand. The boy shook it, his grip firm despite his small frame. "No problem," the boy replied. "Just remember your story. It's worth more than you think." Cristiano watched as the boy picked up his bag and began to walk away, disappearing over the hill as suddenly as he had appeared. As Cristiano climbed back into his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. The desert stretched ahead, but this time it didn't feel so empty. The sun was relentless, hanging high in the sky and turning the desert into a cauldron of heat. Cristiano leaned against his Bugatti, watching the boy methodically arrange the tools he had pulled from his tattered bag. The makeshift collection of wrenches, pliers, and bolts looked cobbled together from various junkyards, yet the boy handled them with the confidence of someone who had been fixing things all his life. The boy crouched by the car, inspecting the flat tire more closely. His hands, small but steady, moved with precision as he touched the torn rubber and nodded to himself. "We'll need to lift it first," he said without looking up. "Do you have a jack?" Cristiano shook his head. "I told you, I don't have a spare, let alone a jack. I didn't expect this." He gestured at the flat tire in the empty expanse of the highway. The boy looked up at him with a raised eyebrow, his expression bordering on amused disbelief. "You drive a car like this into the middle of nowhere, and you didn't bring a jack? That's rich." Cristiano couldn't help but let out a small laugh, the absurdity of the situation finally dawning on him. "Fair point. Can you fix it or not?" The boy grinned. "Watch me." He rummaged through his bag, pulling out a small crowbar and a handful of sturdy rocks he had picked up along the way. Cristiano watched in fascination as the boy positioned the rocks under the frame of the car, creating an impromptu support system. Every movement was deliberate, calculated. There was no hesitation in his actions, as though he had done this countless times before. "Where did you learn to do this?" Cristiano asked, curiosity getting the better of him. The boy didn't pause his work as he replied, "Around. My dad used to fix trucks before he got sick. Now I do what I can to help out. Fixing things, collecting scrap metal. You learn fast when you don't have much choice." There was no trace of self-pity in his voice, only a quiet resolve. Cristiano felt a pang of admiration mixed with guilt. Here he was, a man with wealth beyond imagination, stranded and helpless, while this boy, with nothing but his resourcefulness, was doing what he couldn't. "What's your name?" Cristiano asked after a moment. "Samuel," the boy replied, glancing up briefly before returning to his task. "And you?" Cristiano hesitated. It wasn't often he introduced himself without his name already being known. "Cristiano," he said simply, omitting his last name. Samuel nodded, as if the name held no significance. "Well, Cristiano, you're lucky I came along. This tire's in bad shape, but I can make it work for now." The boy's calm demeanor was infectious. Cristiano found himself relaxing for the first time since the ordeal began. He crouched down beside Samuel, watching intently as the boy used the crowbar to loosen the bolts. His small hands gripped the tool with surprising strength, and the bolts creaked as they gave way. "You've got a story, don't you?" Samuel asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Cristiano blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" "Everyone does," Samuel said, his tone matter of fact. "But people like you've probably got a good one. Something worth telling." Cristiano leaned back slightly, surprised by the boy's insight. "Why do you think that?" Samuel shrugged. "You don't drive a car like this unless you've been somewhere interesting. And you don't end up here in the middle of nowhere unless you're running from something." The words hit Cristiano harder than he expected. He wasn't sure if it was the bluntness of the observation or the truth behind it. "Maybe," he admitted quietly. "But what about you? You're the one walking around the desert with a bag of tools. What's your story?" Samuel paused, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "Not much to tell. My family lives over that hill." He gestured toward the horizon. "It's just me, my parents, and my little sister. I help out however I can. Fix things, find scrap to sell. It's not much, but we get by." The simplicity of Samuel's life contrasted starkly with Cristiano's own. The boy spoke of his struggles with a kind of acceptance that Cristiano couldn't fathom. There was no bitterness, no longing for something more, just a quiet pride in doing what needed to be done. The conversation lapsed into silence again, broken only by the clink of tools and the occasional gust of wind. Cristiano found himself reflecting on his own life. He thought of his youth, growing up in Madeira, playing football barefoot on rough terrain. The sacrifices his family had made, the relentless drive that had brought him to where he was now. It felt like a lifetime ago, a different world. "All done," Samuel said, straightening up and brushing off his hands. He had managed to secure the spare tire, using the rocks and his tools to stabilize and fasten it in place. "It's not perfect, but it'll get you to a garage." Cristiano stood, inspecting the boy's handiwork. The spare tire looked secure, and the makeshift setup was impressive. "You're good at this," he said sincerely. Samuel grinned. "I've had practice." Cristiano reached into his pocket, pulling out a wad of cash. "Here, take this for your help." The boy shook his head, stepping back. "I don't need your money." Cristiano frowned. "Come on, you earned it." Samuel's expression softened, but he stood his ground. "You already gave me something. Your story. That's enough." Cristiano stared at the boy, at a loss for words. It wasn't often that people refused his generosity. Samuel's quiet dignity struck a chord deep within him. "At least let me give you a ride home," Cristiano offered. "It's the least I can do." For a moment, Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but only because it's a long walk." As they climbed into the Bugatti, Cristiano couldn't help but smile. The boy's presence, his confidence, and his unyielding spirit had shifted something inside him. For the first time in what felt like ages, Cristiano felt a sense of purpose beyond the pitch. The car hummed to life, and they pulled back onto the highway. The journey to Samuel's home had begun, but Cristiano had a feeling it was the start of something far more profound. The Bugatti hummed softly as it made its way along the dusty, uneven road. Cristiano glanced over at Samuel, who sat quietly in the passenger seat, looking out the window. The boy's face was calm, but his eyes were filled with a curiosity that took in every detail of the luxurious interior of the car. He reached out once to touch the smooth leather of the seat, his fingers tracing the stitching, before quickly pulling his hand back as though he had touched something forbidden. "How far is it to your home?" Cristiano asked, breaking the silence. "Not far," Samuel replied, pointing ahead. "Over that hill, then a little further. The road's not great, though." Cristiano nodded, taking in the surroundings as they drove. The landscape around them was stark, a mix of dry earth, scattered bushes, and the occasional tree that looked as though it had fought a lifelong battle just to survive. Dust billowed in soft clouds behind the car, and the heat shimmered over the horizon, making everything seem unreal. "You come out here often?" Cristiano asked, trying to make conversation. Samuel shrugged. "Every day. There's always something to find, something to fix or sell. My dad used to do this before he got sick. Now it's up to me." He turned his gaze back out the window, as if the words he spoke were just facts, stripped of any emotion. "That's a lot for someone your age," Cristiano said, genuinely impressed. Samuel turned to him, a slight smile playing on his lips. "It is what it is. You learn to deal with what life gives you, right? Besides, I like being out here sometimes. It's quiet. No one tells me what to do." Cristiano smiled at the boy's bluntness. There was a raw wisdom in Samuel's words, an acceptance of the way things were that Cristiano found both admirable and heartbreaking. He thought of his own childhood, of how different it had been, yet there was a shared struggle, a similar resilience. As they crested a small hill, the view opened up before them. Cristiano could see the village now, a cluster of small, ramshackle houses, some with roofs patched together with tin and tarp, others little more than brick walls and wood. The road was rough with patches of hard-packed dirt and loose stones, and Cristiano had to slow the car down to avoid damaging the undercarriage. "That's it," Samuel said, pointing. "Just over there." The village was alive with movement. Children ran barefoot through the dusty streets, chickens pecked at the ground, and a few adults worked outside, their eyes narrowing as they looked up to see the unfamiliar car approaching. Cristiano could feel the weight of their stares, a mix of curiosity and wariness. The Bugatti, with its gleaming body and powerful engine, was as out of place here as a diamond in the dirt. Samuel gestured for Cristiano to pull over near a modest house at the edge of the village. The house was small, its roof sagging in places, and the paint on the walls was peeling and faded. Cristiano could see a woman standing in the doorway, her face lined with fatigue, her eyes widening as she spotted the car and then her son. Samuel hopped out of the car, waving to his mother. "I'm back," he called. The woman stepped forward, her eyes moving from the car to her son, then to Cristiano, her expression a mix of confusion and worry. She wiped her hands on her apron, looking unsure of what to say. Cristiano opened his door and stepped out, offering her a polite smile. "Hi, I'm Cristiano. Your son helped me out back on the highway. I just wanted to bring him home safely." Samuel's mother looked at her son, her gaze softening as she took in his dust-covered clothes and the determined look in his eyes. "You fixed the car?" she asked, her voice a mix of pride and disbelief. Samuel nodded, a hint of a grin on his face. "Yeah, it wasn't that bad. Just a flat." She shook her head, her eyes misting slightly. "You always find a way, don't you?" She looked back at Cristiano, her voice almost apologetic. "Thank you for bringing him back. We don't see many cars like this around here." Cristiano smiled. "I figured as much. He's quite resourceful. Honestly, he helped me more than I helped him." Samuel's mother smiled, the tension in her shoulders easing. She turned toward the house. "You must be thirsty. We don't have much, but please, come in. Let me get you some water." Cristiano hesitated for a moment, glancing at Samuel, who nodded encouragingly. He followed them toward the house, ducking slightly to fit through the narrow doorway. Inside, the house was dimly lit, the air cool compared to the scorching heat outside. The walls were bare, the floor a simple mix of packed dirt and old tiles. A small table stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by mismatched chairs, and there was a shelf in the corner filled with a few well-worn books and family trinkets. Samuel's mother gestured for Cristiano to sit. She disappeared into a small adjoining room and returned with a clay pitcher and 2 cups. She poured the water carefully, her hands steady, and handed a cup to Cristiano. "Thank you," Cristiano said, accepting it. The water was cool and refreshing, and he took a moment to savor it. It was a simple kindness, but it felt profound in the context of the village's modest setting. Samuel's father entered the room, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch. He was thin, his face gaunt, but his eyes were bright with curiosity. Samuel introduced them, and the man extended a hand toward Cristiano, who shook it firmly. "Thank you for bringing my boy back," he said, his voice raspy but warm. "He's a good kid, always out there helping, always doing what needs to be done." Cristiano nodded. "He's got a good head on his shoulders. You must be proud." The man smiled, his gaze softening as he looked at Samuel. "We are. He's our hope, you know. Keeps us going." Samuel blushed slightly, looking away as though embarrassed by the praise. He motioned toward the small backyard, where Cristiano could see a makeshift goalpost set up. Two wooden sticks stuck into the ground with a piece of string tied across to mark the crossbar. A worn, patched-up football lay nearby. "That's where I practice," Samuel said, his voice quieter now. "I want to play, you know? Really play. Like you." Cristiano's heart squeezed at the boy's quiet admission. He saw himself in Samuel, in his dreams, his determination, his willingness to do whatever it took to make something of himself. "You've got the right spirit," Cristiano said after a moment. "You keep working hard, and you'll get there." Samuel looked up at him, his eyes bright with hope. "You think so?" "I know so," Cristiano said firmly. He reached out, ruffling the boy's hair. "Sometimes it's not about where you start. It's about how much fight you've got in you to keep going." The afternoon slipped by in a comfortable rhythm. Cristiano sat with Samuel and his family, sharing stories over a simple meal of stew and bread. There was a warmth in the air, a sense of community that Cristiano hadn't felt in a long time. The small house was filled with laughter and conversation, and, for a moment, the weight of his fame, his responsibilities, the endless demands of his career, all of it seemed to fade away. Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Cristiano stood up preparing to leave. Samuel walked him back to the car, the patched-up football clutched under his arm. "Thanks for coming in," Samuel said, his voice tinged with something like longing. "It means a lot." Cristiano nodded, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You keep practicing, all right? I'll see if I can come back sometime, maybe even bring a proper football for you." Samuel's face lit up, his smile wide. "Really? You'd do that?" Cristiano nodded. "Really. You've got potential, Samuel. Don't forget that." Samuel stepped back, watching as Cristiano climbed into his car. The engine roared to life, the noise startling a few of the chickens that had wandered nearby. Cristiano gave one last wave, and then he was off, the car rolling slowly down the uneven road. As he drove away, Cristiano looked in the rearview mirror, seeing Samuel standing there, the football held tightly against his chest, his silhouette growing smaller and smaller as the distance between them grew. There was something about that image, about the boy standing in the middle of his humble village, holding on to his dream, that struck a deep chord in Cristiano's heart. He knew he would come back. It wasn't just about helping Samuel. It was about finding a part of himself that he had lost somewhere along the way, a part that Samuel had helped him rediscover. The sun rose early over the desert landscape, casting long shadows across the dusty ground as the village slowly came to life. The air was still cool, the warmth of the day yet to settle in, and a breeze blew softly, rustling the leaves of the few hardy trees that stood scattered across the area. The sound of an engine rumbled in the distance, steadily growing louder. It wasn't the sleek purr of Cristiano's Bugatti this time, but a deeper, heavier sound, a truck making its way along the rough road that led toward Samuel's village. Dust rose up in thick clouds behind it, marking its path through the barren land. Cristiano sat in the front seat, the driver beside him focused on navigating the uneven terrain. Cristiano watched the landscape roll by, his gaze calm, a sense of determination etched across his face. Today was the day he would fulfill the promise he made to Samuel and his family, a promise to change their lives in the way he could, in the way that seemed right. As they crested the hill, the village came into view. Small children played in the open spaces, their laughter drifting in the early morning air, while adults moved about, tending to chores and talking amongst themselves. But as the truck approached, the laughter faded and the chatter quieted. People turned to look, their eyes widening in surprise and confusion at the sight of the large vehicle rumbling toward them. The truck came to a stop in front of Samuel's house, its brakes hissing as it settled into place. Cristiano stepped out, his presence immediately drawing the attention of the villagers. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Every one knew who he was. The international star, the famous footballer back in their village again, and this time with a truck full of something they could only guess. Samuel's mother appeared at the doorway, her eyes wide with a mix of astonishment and uncertainty. Samuel rushed out of the house, his eyes bright as he recognized Cristiano. "You're back!" Samuel called out, a grin spreading across his face as he ran over to Cristiano. "I didn't think you'd really come." Cristiano knelt down slightly, giving the boy a warm smile. "I told you I'd come back, didn't I? And I brought some things that I think might help." Samuel's eyes widened in curiosity, his gaze shifting to the truck. "What kind of things?" Cristiano turned to the driver, giving him a nod. The man jumped down from the cab, walked to the back of the truck, and pulled open the large metal door. Inside, stacked neatly and secured for transport, were boxes upon boxes, each one filled with different supplies. Clothes, food, furniture, toys, and, as Cristiano had promised, a proper football. A gasp went through the crowd as people moved closer, their eyes fixed on the contents of the truck. Samuel's mother stepped forward, her hand over her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Cristiano looked at her, his gaze sincere. "Your family helped me when I needed it. Samuel reminded me of where I came from, of the dreams I had when I was his age, with no idea how I'd ever make them real. This is my way of saying thank you." Samuel looked up at him, his face filled with awe. "All this, for us?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Cristiano nodded. "For you, and for the village. You've all worked so hard with so little, and I want to help make things a little easier." The driver and a few villagers began unloading the boxes, placing them in front of Samuel's house. There were clothes, new, bright, and clean, a stark contrast to the worn garments many of the villagers wore. There were toys for the children, simple but colorful, the kind of things they rarely saw. And there was food, bags of rice, flour, sugar, canned goods, and fresh produce, enough to feed the village for weeks. Samuel's father came out from the house, his crutch tapping softly on the ground. He looked at Cristiano, his eyes filled with emotion. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice hoarse with gratitude. "I know," Cristiano replied, his voice quiet, "but I wanted to. You've got a family that loves each other, that sticks together through everything. It's the least I could do." The villagers gathered around, their expressions ranging from joy to disbelief. Mothers held their children close, their eyes misting as they watched their little ones marvel over new toys. The men nodded their thanks, their faces solemn, understanding the significance of what was happening. Samuel's mother stood there, her tears spilling over as she looked at the new clothes and shoes that had been brought for her children. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the fabric as though she couldn't quite believe it was real. She looked at Cristiano, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "You've given us more than we could ever ask for." Cristiano shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep being the family you are. That's thanks enough." Samuel watched, his eyes wide, as the villagers began to take the supplies, distributing them among themselves. He turned back to Cristiano, who held out a small box to him, a football kit complete with cleats, socks, and a jersey, along with a brand new ball. The jersey bore the number 7, just like Cristiano's. Samuel's hands shook slightly as he took the box, his eyes welling with tears. "Is this really for me?" he asked, his voice cracking. Cristiano nodded, smiling. "It's for you. I want you to wear it when you play, and I want you to remember that no matter where you come from, no matter what anyone says, you can achieve anything if you work hard and never give up." Samuel swallowed hard, blinking back his tears as he looked down at the jersey. He ran his fingers over the number, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose and hope he had never felt before. He looked up at Cristiano, his voice barely a whisper. "I promise I'll make you proud," he said. Cristiano smiled, reaching out to ruffle Samuel's hair. "I know you will. Just keep that fire inside you burning, and you'll go far." The rest of the day was filled with a sense of celebration. Cristiano helped distribute the supplies, talking with the villagers, sharing stories and laughter. There was a warmth and sense of community that filled the air, and Cristiano found himself feeling a kind of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. As the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting everything in a golden glow, Cristiano gathered Samuel and his family together one last time. There was one more surprise: a new home. With the help of local contractors, Cristiano had arranged for a simple but sturdy house to be built just beyond the edge of the village. It was bigger, with a solid roof, real floors, and windows that let in the light. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, comfortable, and it was theirs. When Samuel's family saw the house, there were no words, only tears and hugs, the kind that said more than words ever could. Samuel's mother sank to her knees in the doorway, her hands pressed to her face as she wept. Samuel's father stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, his own eyes wet with tears. Cristiano stood back, letting the family take it all in. He watched as Samuel explored each room, his eyes wide with wonder, his laughter echoing through the new walls. He knew that, for Samuel, this was the beginning of something entirely new, something bigger than anything he'd ever dreamed of. As the day turned into evening, Cristiano said his goodbyes, knowing he had to leave, but also knowing that this wasn't the end. Samuel's family stood in the doorway of their new home, waving as the truck rumbled away down the dusty road. Cristiano looked back one last time, seeing their silhouettes framed against the soft glow of the setting sun. There was a sense of fulfillment that settled in Cristiano's chest, a feeling that he had done something truly meaningful, something that went beyond the goals scored or the trophies won. He had made a difference in someone's life, and in return, he had found a piece of himself that he had forgotten. The desert stretched out before him, endless and unyielding, but now it seemed less desolate. Somewhere out there, amid the sand and the sun, was a boy named Samuel, wearing his number, holding on to his dream, and working toward a future that just days ago had seemed impossible. And for Cristiano, that was enough. The early morning sun was only just starting to rise over the training grounds, casting long shadows over the manicured grass fields. The crisp, cool air was filled with anticipation as Cristiano guided Samuel through the gates of the training academy. The contrast between this place and the dusty fields Samuel was used to was staggering. Here, the grass was a vibrant green, trimmed to perfection, with multiple fields stretching out as far as he could see. Gleaming goalposts, well-marked lines, and stands for spectators made the place feel like a different world. Samuel held his new football kit close to his chest, his eyes wide with awe as he took in the sights around him. He watched as young players, dressed in identical training uniforms, jogged across the fields in well-disciplined groups, their laughter and chatter filling the air. There was an energy here, a focused, purposeful energy that seemed to buzz all around him. "Welcome to your first day of real training," Cristiano said, his voice carrying a warmth that helped ease some of Samuel's nerves. He rested a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Remember what I told you. Work hard and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You belong here, just as much as anyone else." Samuel nodded, swallowing hard as he looked around. It was easy to feel overwhelmed. These were boys who had probably been training for years, who knew the ins and outs of professional football. He, on the other hand, was just a kid from a small village with nothing but an old, patched-up ball and a dream. He glanced at Cristiano, who smiled encouragingly. "You've got this," Cristiano said, his voice filled with certainty. Samuel took a deep breath and nodded. They approached a man standing near the edge of the field, clipboard in hand. He was tall, with a stern face softened only by the hint of a smile as he caught sight of Cristiano. The man was the academy's head coach, known for his sharp eye and no-nonsense approach to training. "Cristiano," the coach greeted him with a handshake. "So, this is the young talent you've told me about?" Cristiano nodded, stepping aside to introduce Samuel. "Coach, this is Samuel. He's got a lot of raw potential, and I think he's got the right mindset to make it." The coach looked Samuel up and down, his eyes narrowing slightly as though appraising the boy. Samuel shifted nervously under his gaze, feeling the weight of the moment. The coach finally nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "All right, Samuel, let's see what you've got," he said, his voice even. "Get changed and join the rest of the boys on the field. We'll start with some drills." Samuel nodded quickly, turning to head to the changing rooms. Cristiano watched as he disappeared through the doors, a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. He knew how intimidating this first day could be, how the pressure could make or break a young player. But he had seen something in Samuel, something beyond just skill. It was the kind of determination that had driven Cristiano himself from the streets of Madeira to the world's biggest stages. When Samuel returned, dressed in his new kit with the number 7 on his back, there was a new light in his eyes. He jogged out to the field, joining the group of young players who were already stretching and warming up. Cristiano stayed back, giving Samuel the space to find his own way. The coach blew his whistle, signaling the start of the drills, and Samuel quickly fell in line, trying to match the rhythm of the other boys. The first few drills were basic passing exercises, but Samuel found himself struggling to keep up. His nerves made his movements stiff, and he felt out of sync with the others. His passes were either too short or too hard, and the coach corrected him more than once. Samuel could feel the eyes of his new teammates on him, some curious, others with a hint of doubt. He felt his confidence begin to waver, and his chest tightened with the fear that maybe he didn't belong here after all. He stole a glance toward the sidelines where Cristiano stood, watching intently. Their eyes met, and Cristiano gave him a nod, his expression encouraging. It was a small gesture, but it helped Samuel find his center. He took a deep breath, letting go of the anxiety that had gripped him, and focused solely on the ball in front of him. The next drill involved dribbling through a set of cones. Samuel had spent countless hours doing similar drills back home, albeit with old tin cans instead of proper cones. He let his body take over, trusting in the muscle memory he had developed on the dusty field behind his house. His feet moved more smoothly, the ball staying close to him as he weaved through the obstacles. He could feel the difference. He was finding his rhythm again. By the time they moved on to the scrimmage, Samuel was beginning to feel a surge of confidence. He watched his new teammates carefully, studying their movements, the way they called for the ball, their positioning. When it was his turn to play, he took to the field with determination, ready to prove that he belonged. The ball came to him, and instinct took over. He dribbled past one opponent, then another, his body moving fluidly as he sidestepped a third. He passed the ball off just as a defender closed in, his teammate catching it perfectly before sending it into the net. A cheer went up from the sidelines, and Samuel heard the coach's whistle, followed by a shout of approval. "That's it, Samuel. Good work," the coach called. A smile broke across Samuel's face, his heart swelling with pride. For the first time that day, he felt like he was truly part of the team. He glanced over at Cristiano, who gave him a thumbs up, his expression filled with pride. The scrimmage continued, and Samuel threw himself into it with everything he had. He made mistakes. He tripped once, lost the ball to an opponent, misjudged a pass, but each time he picked himself back up, determined to do better. And with each play, he could feel himself improving, adjusting, finding his place among his new teammates. By the end of the session, Samuel was exhausted, his body aching in ways it never had before. But it was a good kind of exhaustion, the kind that came from giving everything he had. The coach gathered the players together, giving them a few words of encouragement before dismissing them for the day. Samuel lingered for a moment, catching his breath before jogging over to where Cristiano was waiting. "You did well," Cristiano said, clapping a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "I could see you getting better with every drill." Samuel looked up at him, his eyes tired but bright. "It was harder than I thought," he admitted, "but I want to keep going. I want to get better." Cristiano nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "That's the right attitude, Samuel. No one becomes great without hard work. You've got what it takes. You just have to keep pushing." Samuel smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I will, I promise." As they walked off the field together, Cristiano couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. Watching Samuel today had reminded him of his own journey, of the countless hours of training, the setbacks, the triumphs. It had reminded him of why he loved the game, of the passion that had driven him from the very beginning. They reached the parking lot where the academy staff had provided Cristiano with a car for the day. Samuel climbed in, his body sinking into the seat, clearly exhausted. Cristiano looked over at him, a smile tugging at his lips. "You've earned some rest today, kid," he said, "but tomorrow we'll be back, and we'll work even harder." Samuel grinned, nodding. "I can't wait." The drive back to the village was quiet, Samuel dozing off in the passenger seat as the fields and hills rolled by outside the window. Cristiano glanced at him from time to time, a sense of responsibility settling over him. He knew what it was like to have a dream that seemed impossible, to face obstacles that seemed insurmountable, and he knew that sometimes all it took was for someone to believe in you, for someone to give you the chance to prove yourself. As they arrived back at Samuel's home, the boy's family rushed out to meet them. Samuel's mother pulled him into a tight hug, her eyes filled with pride. Samuel's father smiled at Cristiano, his voice thick with emotion as he thanked him once again. "He's got talent," Cristiano said, looking at Samuel, "and he's got the heart to match. That's all he needs." Samuel looked up at him, his eyes shining with determination. "I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to get better." Cristiano nodded, his heart full. "I know you will, Samuel. I have no doubt." As he drove away from the village, Cristiano felt a deep sense of hope. Samuel was just at the beginning of his journey, but he had the fire, the drive, and the courage to keep going. And Cristiano knew that, no matter where his own path led him, he would always be there to support Samuel, just as others had supported him when he was starting out. The academy was just the first step, but it was a step in the right direction. And for Samuel, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with possibility, growth, and the promise of greatness. The sun hung low in the sky as the car rolled along the dusty road that led toward Samuel's village. The warm, golden hues of twilight bathed everything in a soft, almost magical light. The horizon stretched endlessly, and the familiar sight of Samuel's home drew closer as Cristiano drove. He looked over at Samuel, who sat beside him, wearing the number 7 jersey Cristiano had given him, the fabric clinging to his small frame, already covered in dirt and sweat from the day's training. Today had been one of Samuel's best training sessions yet. He had run faster, kicked harder, and passed with more precision. He was learning to think like a player, anticipating his teammates' moves, reading the game. And Cristiano could see it, the glimmer of real talent, the raw potential that needed only guidance and time to be nurtured. As they pulled up to the house, the door swung open, and Samuel's mother came rushing out, her face lighting up at the sight of her son. She hugged Samuel tightly the moment he stepped out of the car, her smile brimming with pride. Samuel returned her hug, his eyes meeting Cristiano's with a silent thank you. Cristiano stepped out of the car, stretching his legs. Samuel's father emerged from the house, using his crutch to steady himself as he approached. His face was lined with fatigue, but there was a joy in his eyes as he looked at his son. "How was training?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. Samuel's eyes sparkled. "It was good, Papa. I'm getting better." His voice held a note of excitement that made his father's smile widen. Cristiano watched as the family gathered around Samuel, their voices a soft mix of questions and answers, pride and reassurance. The simplicity of their love, their closeness, struck a deep chord in him. Here was a family that had almost nothing by material standards but everything when it came to the things that truly mattered. As they stood there, the gentle twilight deepening around them, Samuel's father turned to Cristiano, his voice thick with gratitude. "We can never thank you enough for all you've done, Cristiano. You've given us more than we could have ever hoped for." Cristiano shook his head, his voice quiet. "It's not about thanks. It's about giving someone a chance. Samuel's got so much potential, and I'm just trying to make sure he has the opportunity to show the world what he can do." Samuel looked at Cristiano, his eyes filled with determination. "I promise I won't let you down. I'll work as hard as I can. I want to be just like you." Cristiano smiled, resting a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Don't be like me, Samuel. Be better. Be the best version of yourself. And never forget where you come from, because that's what gives you strength." Samuel nodded, and there was something fierce in his expression, something that spoke of his resolve, his unbreakable spirit. Cristiano felt a surge of pride, knowing that Samuel was on his way, that no matter what lay ahead, he had already taken the hardest step. He had begun. The evening wore on, and Samuel and his family invited Cristiano to stay for dinner. The meal was simple: stew with freshly baked bread, vegetables grown in the small garden behind their home. As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Cristiano felt a warmth fill him that had nothing to do with the food or the fire that crackled softly nearby. It was a sense of belonging, of being part of something greater than himself. It was a reminder of why he had fallen in love with football in the first place. Not for the fame or the money, but for the way it brought people together, the way it created a community, a family. After dinner, Samuel led Cristiano to the backyard, where the makeshift goal still stood, a piece of string stretched across the 2 wooden sticks that marked the posts. The ground was uneven, with patches of grass and dirt, but to Samuel it was a sacred place, his own training ground where he had nurtured his dreams long before Cristiano had come into his life. "Do you want to play for a bit?" Samuel asked, his voice hopeful, his eyes shining in the dim light. Cristiano looked at the boy, at the determination in his gaze, and nodded. "All right, let's see what you've got." Samuel's grin was infectious as he ran to grab the new football that Cristiano had given him. He set it down at his feet, his eyes narrowing in concentration. Cristiano moved to the goal, positioning himself as goalkeeper, and Samuel took a few steps back, preparing to strike. "Remember," Cristiano called out, "it's not just about power. You have to aim. Think about where you want the ball to go." Samuel nodded, his eyes focused. He took a deep breath and then ran forward, his foot connecting with the ball in a clean, powerful strike. The ball sailed through the air, and for a moment, it seemed as though time itself had slowed down. Cristiano moved, diving to his left, his fingers brushing the ball, but it was just out of reach. It sailed into the back of the makeshift goal, and Samuel let out a shout of triumph, his arms raised in celebration. Cristiano got up, dusting himself off, a wide smile on his face. "That was a good shot, Samuel. You're getting stronger." Samuel beamed, his face flushed with excitement. "One day, I'll be scoring goals like that in a real stadium. I'll make everyone proud." Cristiano walked over to him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You will, Samuel. You've got the talent, but more importantly, you've got the heart. Just keep working hard and never give up." Samuel looked up at him, his eyes filled with hope and determination. "I will, Cristiano. I promise." As the night deepened, Cristiano knew it was time to leave. He walked back to the house where Samuel's family stood waiting, their faces filled with gratitude and warmth. Samuel's mother hugged him tightly, her voice barely a whisper as she thanked him once again. Cristiano looked down at Samuel, his heart full. "I'll be keeping an eye on you, kid. I want to see you make it big. And when you do, remember this place. Remember where it all started." Samuel nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. "I will. I'll never forget." Cristiano climbed into the car, starting the engine. He gave one last wave, and then the car began to roll away, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Samuel stood there, watching until the car was nothing more than a distant light, his heart filled with hope, determination, and a sense of purpose that burned brightly. As Cristiano drove away, he felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that this wasn't the end of his connection with Samuel. He would always be there, watching from afar, supporting him in any way he could. He had given Samuel a chance, but in return, Samuel had given him something far greater, a reminder of what truly mattered, of why he had started playing football in the first place. The road stretched ahead, winding through the desert, the stars beginning to appear in the vast sky above. Cristiano knew that his life would go on. More games, more goals, more victories and losses. But tonight, as he drove away from that small village, he knew that he had done something truly meaningful. He had planted a seed of hope, and he would watch it grow, knowing that one day Samuel would make his dreams come true. And as he looked out at the endless desert, he felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He knew that he had made a difference, that he had helped someone take the first steps on a path that could lead to greatness. And for Cristiano, that was enough. Samuel stood at the edge of the village, the ball clutched tightly in his hands, watching the car disappear into the night. He knew that his life had changed forever, that the future was now full of possibilities that had once seemed impossible. He looked down at the ball, a smile spreading across his face, and he turned back toward his home, his heart filled with hope and determination. He would train harder than ever. He would push himself to the limits, and one day he would stand on that field wearing the number 7 with pride. He would make his family proud. He would make Cristiano proud, but most importantly, he would make himself proud. And as he walked back to his house, the stars above shining brightly, Samuel knew that his journey was only just beginning. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new videos. Share this video with your friends and family to inspire them, and be sure to check out the other stories on our channel. There are many more to come.